The courtroom smelled of polished wood and broken dreams, a stale air that clung to Maya Thompson's skin like damp cloth. She stood at the plaintiff's table, her heart a drumbeat in her chest, each thump louder than the last. At just 22, her braided hair pulled tight, her faded dress patched at the hem, she looked small in the shadow of the towering oak bench where Judge Harlan loomed. His silver hair gleamed under the fluorescent lights, his eyes cold as the steel in his voice. Case dismissed. He barked, slamming his gavel down. The sound cracked through the room, sharp as a whip, and Maya flinched, her breath catching. Dismissed. After all she'd poured into this fight, the gallery behind her buzzed, a swarm of whispers slicing at her back. Another gold digger, they hissed, just chasing a payday. Her dark eyes burned, tears threatening to spill, but she blinked them away. She wouldn't break, not here, not now. Maya's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table, her nails digging into the wood. She'd come to this courtroom seeking justice, a piece of the truth that had been buried her whole life. Edward Langford, the billionaire tycoon whose skyscrapers pierced the city's skyline, was her father, or so her mother had sworn. A secret affair, a love hidden in the shadows, a promise whispered on a deathbed. Maya could still see her mother's frail hands, clutching hers in that dim apartment, the walls stained with years of struggle. "He loved me, Maya," her mother had rasped, her voice barely above a wheeze. "He's your father. Don't let them take that from you." That memory was a fire in Maya's chest, burning hotter as she stood in this room, surrounded by wealth and power she'd never known. The Langford estate was worth billions, mansions, private jets, a legacy of untouchable privilege. And she, a girl from the projects, dared to claim a piece of it. Across the courtroom, Victor Langford leaned back in his chair, his smirk sharp enough to cut glass. The billionaire's son was everything Maya wasn't: polished, powerful, draped in a tailored suit that cost more than her yearly rent. His green eyes flicked over her, dismissive, like she was a smudge on his perfect world. He didn't need to speak. His presence screamed entitlement. Victor had grown up in the glow of his father's empire, never knowing hunger, never knowing fear. To him, Maya was a nuisance, a flea to be flicked away. The gallery agreed, their murmurs growing louder, a chorus of judgment. "She's lying," someone muttered. "No proof," said another. Maya's lawyer, a tired public defender with a rumpled tie, leaned close, his hand heavy on her shoulder. "We did what we could," he whispered. But Maya shrugged him off, her chin lifting, her spine straightening. She wasn't done. Her mind flashed back to the nights she'd spent as a child, staring out her bedroom window at the glittering towers of Langford Enterprises. They were so close, yet so far, a world she could see but never touch. Her mother worked double shifts at a diner, her hands raw from scrubbing dishes, all to keep food on the table. Maya had grown up on dreams and dollar store meals, her heart tethered to her mother's stories of a man who'd promised to come back. Edward Langford. A man who'd left them behind, erased them from his life like a mistake. Now, standing in this courtroom, Maya felt that same erasure. Judge Harlan's words echoed in her ears. "No evidence. No evidence." The lie strung sharp as a slap. In her bag, clutched tight against her hip, was the truth, a DNA report sealed in an envelope, its results a ticking bomb. She hadn't shown it yet, hadn't trusted the system to hear her. But now, with the gavel's echo fading, she knew she had no choice. The courtroom was a battlefield, every stare a weapon. Judge Harlan leaned forward, his glasses glinting, his face carved from stone. "You have nothing, Miss Thompson," he said, his voice low, final. "This court has no time for baseless claims." Baseless? The word was a spark, igniting something fierce in Maya's chest. She thought of her mother's grave, a simple marker in a weedy cemetery, paid for with borrowed money. She thought of the years she'd spent invisible, dismissed, her voice unheard. No more. She took a step forward, her worn shoes squeaking on the polished floor. The gallery fell silent, their whispers snuffed out. Victor's smirk faltered, just for a moment. Maya's lawyer hissed her name, a warning, but she ignored him. Her hand tightened around her bag, the DNA report a weight she could feel in her bones. "Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling but clear, "you haven't seen everything." The words hung in the air, heavy as thunder. Judge Harlan's eyes narrowed, his gavel hovering like a threat. Victor shifted in his seat, his jaw tight. The gallery leaned forward, a collective intake of breath. Maya's heart raced, her pulse a roar in her ears. She could feel the room closing in, the weight of every stare, every doubt. but she stood taller, her gaze locked on the judge. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for her mother, for every promise broken, every door slammed shut. The DNA report was her weapon, her truth, but would it be enough? In this room, where wealth and power wrote the rules, could a girl like her ever win? Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Maya's fingers brushed the clasp of her bag, her breath shallow. She could pull the report now, lay it bare, but something held her back. Fear, no strategy. She'd learned young that timing was everything, when to speak, when to wait. The judge's impatience was a crack in his armor. Victor's unease was a chink in his. She let the moment linger, her eyes sweeping the room, meeting every stare. Let them wonder, let them squirm. She wasn't the scared girl they thought they saw. She was a storm, gathering strength, ready to break. The courtroom held its breath, a web of power and pain spun tight. Maya stood at its center, her voice a spark in the dark. She didn't know if the DNA report would change their minds, didn't know if justice was even possible in a world that bowed to men like Victor Langford. But she knew one thing: she wouldn't go quietly. Her mother's whispers, her childhood dreams, the weight of every door slammed in her face, they fueled her now. She was here, standing tall, demanding to be seen. And no gavel, no smirk, no whispered lie could silence her. As the judge opened his mouth to speak, Maya's hand slipped into her bag, her fingers closing around the envelope. The room seemed to pulse, the air electric with what came next. Would she reveal it now or hold her secret close? The choice was hers and hers alone. But one truth rang clear, louder than any gavel: Maya Thompson was no one's afterthought. She was a daughter, a fighter, a force, and this fight was far from over. In the end, her stand wasn't just about an inheritance or a name. It was about dignity, about carving a place in a world that tried to erase her. Every eye in that courtroom, every heart that paused, learned something that day. Respect isn't given, it's taken. Humanity isn't a gift, it's a demand. And Maya, with her trembling voice and unyielding spirit, was demanding it all. Maya Thompson stood frozen in the courtroom, the oak panels around her swallowing the last echoes of Judge Harlan's dismissal. Her breath hitched, shallow and sharp, as if the air itself had turned against her. Victor Langford's voice cut through the haze, deliberate, venomous, meant to wound. "She's just after the money," he sneered, loud enough for the entire room to hear, his blue eyes glinting with cold triumph as he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed like a king on his throne. His high-powered attorney, a man with slick hair and a sharper smile, nodded, jotting notes, as if Maya's life was just another case to bury. Her heart pounded, each beat a hammer against her ribs. She wanted to scream, to make them see her, but the weight of their stares pinned her in place. Judge, jury, gallery, all eyes carving her into something small, something less. Her mind spiraled back to the shadows of her childhood, to the cramped apartment where the walls smelled of mildew and dreams deferred. She could still see her mother, knees raw from scrubbing floors in one of Langford's gleaming towers, her hands trembling as she tucked Maya into bed. "Don't tell nobody about him," her mother had whispered, eyes wet with secrets. "It's for your future, baby." Edward Langford's name was a ghost in their home, a love her mother hid to shield Maya from shame. Now orphaned and broke, Maya had come to this courtroom to claim what was hers, not just money, but truth, a name, a place. But the deck was stacked, the game rigged. Whispers in elite circles spoke of Judge Harlan's old ties to the Langford family, favors traded over cigars and scotch. She saw it now, in the way his gavel fell too fast, in the way he cut her off mid-testimony. "Irrelevant sob stories," he snapped, his voice a blade slicing through her words. She'd been telling him about her mother's sacrifice, about the nights they went hungry while Langford's empire grew. Irrelevant, the word burned, a spark in her chest. Maya's fists clenched at her sides, nails biting into her palms until she felt the sting of blood. She wanted to shrink, to disappear under the gallery's murmurs, but something fiercer kept her rooted. "How can you ignore the truth?" she said, her voice cracking, loud enough to make the room pause. Heads turned. Victor's smirk vanished, replaced by a flash of irritation. He leaned forward, his tailored suit catching the light. "Truth," he spat, his tone dripping with scorn. "You're a stranger exploiting a dead man's name." The words landed like a punch, and the gallery stirred, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably, their eyes darting away. She felt their judgment, heavy as chains. To them, she was an outsider, a black girl from the wrong side of town, daring to challenge a billionaire's legacy. The power imbalance was a living thing, coiling around her, squeezing tight. Victor's attorney rose, his voice smooth as silk but sharp as glass. "Miss Thompson," he said, packing before the bench, "why now? Why wait until Mr. Langford's death to come forward? Is it because you saw dollar signs?" The question was a trap, twisting her poverty into greed. Maya's throat tightened, her pulse a roar in her ears. "I didn't know," she said, her voice low but steady. "My mother kept it secret until she was gone." The attorney smirked, turning to the gallery as if sharing a private joke. "Convenient," he said, drawing out the word. Laughter rippled through the crowd, soft but cruel. Maya's cheeks burned, humiliation sinking into her bones. She glanced at Judge Harlan, hoping for fairness, but his gaze was stone, his lips a thin line of disdain. He tapped his pen, impatient, as if her pain was a waste of his time. The courtroom was a furnace, every whisper a flame licking at her resolve. "She doesn't belong here," someone muttered, the words floating from the gallery like poison. Maya's eyes strung, but she blinked hard, refusing tears. She thought of her mother, of the generations before her, women who'd faced doors slammed shut, voices silenced. Their strength was in her blood, a fire that refused to die. She straightened, her shoulders squaring, and met Victor's stare. His eyes were ice, mocking, but she held them, unblinking. The room seemed to still, the air thick with unspoken challenges. "I'm not here for your money," she said, her voice rising, each word a stone she'd carried too long. "I'm here because my mother deserved better, because I deserve better." The gallery fell silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy. Even Victor's attorney paused, his pen hovering. But the fight wasn't over. The attorney recovered, his questions sharper now, each one a jab at her character. "No proof of this alleged affair," he said. "No letters, no photos, just your word." He let the question linger, his smile a blade. Maya's hands shook, the DNA report in her bag a secret she hadn't revealed. She held it back, afraid they'd dismiss it, afraid they'd twist it like they twisted her life. Now, with every eye on her, she felt the weight of that choice. Should she show it? Could she trust this room, this judge, this system? Judge Harlan leaned forward, his voice a growl. "Answer the question, Miss Thompson." The command was a wall closing in. Maya's breath caught, her mind racing. She could feel her resilience fraying, threads snapping under the pressure, but she wouldn't break. Not yet. Silence stretched, a heartbeat of tension that pulsed through the room. Victor's stare burned, his confidence a taunt. The gallery waited, some leaning forward, others whispering again, their doubt a chorus. Maya's fingers twitched toward her bag, the envelope inside a lifeline she wasn't sure she could trust. Her mother's face flashed in her mind, tired, fierce, unbroken. "You're enough," her mother had said, her last words a gift. Maya clung to them now, her fury igniting, a storm building in her chest. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for every woman like her, every voice drowned out by power. The attorney opened his mouth to press her again, but she cut him off, her voice low, dangerous. "You want proof," she said, her eyes locking on Judge Harlan. "You're not ready for it." The room froze, every breath held. Victor's jaw tightened, a flicker of unease in his eyes. The judge's pen stopped, his gaze narrowing. Maya stood at the edge of a cliff, her next move a mystery even to herself. Would she pull the report, lay her truth bare, or would she hold it close, let them underestimate her a little longer? The choice was a knife, sharp and heavy in her hand. She felt the weight of injustice, not just hers but countless others, pressing down. Yet in that moment, she was more than a girl in a worn dress. She was a force, a spark, a storm waiting to break. And as the silence deepened, one truth stood clear. Maya Thompson wasn't here to beg. She was here to demand, to be seen, to be heard. The courtroom might try to bury her, but she'd rise again and again until the world knew her name. Because dignity wasn't something you asked for, it was something you claimed. And Maya was claiming hers, with every trembling word, every unyielding stare, every beat of her unbroken heart. The courtroom air was heavy, thick with the weight of Judge Harlan's gavel poised to end it all. Maya Thompson stood, her worn dress clinging to her frame, her braided hair a crown of quiet defiance. The murmurs of the gallery faded as her voice sliced through, steady as steel, sharp as truth. "One more piece of evidence," she said, her words a spark in the dim room. igniting every eye, every heart. She slid an envelope across the plaintiff's table, its edges worn from her grip, a sealed secret that had burned in her bag like a coal. The DNA report, her lifeline. Victor Langford's smirk, that cruel curve of his lips, vanished as if slapped away. His blue eyes widened, his face paling to the color of ash. The gallery leaned forward, breaths held, as Judge Harlan's hand hesitated, then took the envelope, his stern face twitching with something unspoken, doubt, maybe, or fear. Maya stood taller, her dignity a fire that refused to flicker, and the room felt it, a shift in the air, a storm breaking. Her mind flashed to the nights she'd spent piecing this together, a girl from the projects turned detective by necessity. She scavenged truth from the edges of Edward Langford's world, discarded coffee cups, a cigarette butt, items plucked from the billionaire's careless life. Anonymous testing, paid for with every cent she'd scraped together, had given her this proof, irrefutable. The memory of her mother's voice anchored her now, soft but fierce, in that dim apartment. "He loved us, Maya," her mother had whispered, her dying breath a vow, "but he was weak." Maya had carried that weakness, that love, that betrayal all her life. Now she laid it bare. Judge Harlan broke the seal, his fingers slow, deliberate, as if sensing the earthquake to come. The room was a held breath, every stare locked on the papers in his hands. Then his voice, low and unsteady, read the result. 99.9% match. Maya Thompson was Edward Langford's daughter. The words landed like thunder, shattering the courtroom's fragile order. Silence swallowed the room. Gasps died in throats. The gallery froze, their whispers choked off, their judgment turned to shock. Victor's chair scraped as he shot to his feet, his tailored suit no shield now. "This can't be," he whispered, his voice a crack in his crumbling empire. His eyes darted to the judge, to his attorney, to the papers that betrayed him. Maya's gaze met his, not in triumph, but in pity, a quiet power that burned brighter than his rage. She saw him now, not as the untouchable heir, but as a man clinging to a lie. The power dynamic flipped, the billionaire's son reduced to a stammering boy, his arrogance dust. Judge Harlan's face, once stone, cracked, regret flickered in his eyes, a shadow of guilt for the dismissal he'd wielded so easily. The gallery shifted, uncomfortable, their nods of agreement replaced by averted glances, their certainty undone. Maya's heart raced, not with victory but with the weight of truth exposed. Her mind drifted to the letters she'd found, hidden in her mother's old shoebox, yellowed pages from Edward Langford himself, words of love, of remorse, of cowardice. "I can't face them, Clara," he'd written to her mother. "The world would tear us apart." He'd chosen his empire over them, his fear over his family. Those letters were Maya's map, guiding her to this moment, her resilience forged in years of survival. She learned to read people, to find cracks in their lies, to unearth what they buried. Now that talent shone, a light that humbled the powerful. The courtroom wasn't just a battleground, it was a mirror, reflecting the Langford family's sins. Whispers of their cover-up surfaced, bribes paid to silence rumors, deals struck in shadowed rooms. The truth was a blade, and Maya wielded it, not with anger, but with grace. The silence broke, a rustle of papers as Judge Harlan set the report down, his hands trembling slightly. He cleared his throat, but no words came. Victor's attorney scrambled, his voice rising in protest, but it was hollow, a desperate grab at a sinking ship. "We'll need to verify this," the attorney said, but his eyes betrayed him, wide with panic. Maya stood still, her breath steady now, her posture unbowed. She felt the weight of her mother's love, her grandmother's strength, the countless women before her who'd faced giants and refused to kneel. This wasn't just her fight, it was theirs, a chorus of voices rising through her. The gallery watched, some with awe, others with shame, as the underdog transformed into the rightful force. Maya wasn't here to beg for scraps. She was here to claim her place, to rewrite a story that had erased her. Victor sank back into his chair, his hands gripping the table, his knuckles white. He looked at Maya, really looked at her, and for a moment something flickered in his eyes, fear maybe, or recognition. She wasn't a stranger, she was his sister. The word hung unspoken, a truth too heavy for him to carry. Maya's eyes softened, not because she forgave him, but because she understood. He was trapped too in a legacy built on lies. The judge's gavel hovered, but he didn't strike it. The room pulsed with tension, every heart racing, every mind reeling. What came next? Would the Langfords fight back, bury this truth again, or would they crumble under its weight? Maya's hand rested on the table, steady, her envelope now a weapon that had changed everything. She exposed their betrayal, their greed, their fear, and in doing so, she'd reclaimed her name. The courtroom was a crucible, forging something new. Maya stood at its center, her resilience a beacon, shattering illusions of power. She didn't need their money, their mansions, their approval. She needed truth, and she'd found it not just in the DNA report, but in herself. The gallery felt it, the judge felt it, even Victor, in his unraveling, felt it. Power wasn't in wealth or status. It was in standing tall, in speaking when the world demanded silence. Maya's gaze swept the room, meeting every eye, daring them to look away. They didn't. They couldn't. She was no longer the girl from the projects, the opportunist, the liar. She was Maya Thompson, daughter of Edward Langford, daughter of Clara, daughter of truth. As the judge opened his mouth to speak, the room hung on the edge of a cliff, the next moment a mystery. Would he acknowledge her or dismiss her again? Would Victor lash out or shrink further? Maya didn't know, but she was ready. Her heart was a drum, steady, unbroken, her mother's love its rhythm. This wasn't the end, it was a beginning. And in that moment, one lesson burned clear, brighter than any gavel's strike. Dignity isn't given, it's claimed. Respect isn't offered, it's demanded. Humanity isn't a gift, it's a fire, and Maya's was blazing, lighting the way for anyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. She was here, and she wasn't going anywhere. The courtroom was a battlefield, its silence a fragile shell that shattered into chaos. Papers rustled, whispers erupted, and Victor Langford slumped in his chair, the DNA report's truth a stone crushing his polished entitlement. Maya Thompson stood at the plaintiff's table, her heart a steady drum, tears streaming down her face, not from defeat, but from a catharsis that burned like sunlight after a storm. Her braided hair caught the courtroom's dim glow, her worn dress a testament to battles fought and won. The gallery watched, their murmurs fading into a hush, as Judge Harlan's gavel hung still, his stern face softened by a crack of humility. He cleared his throat, his voice no longer a blade but a whisper of reckoning. "Justice demands acknowledgement," he said, the words heavy, deliberate, as if pulled from a place he'd long buried. "The estate will be shared." The room exhaled, a collective breath that shifted the air, and Maya's tears fell harder, her shoulders trembling, her dignity a fire that lit the dark. Her mind flashed to her mother, to the nights in their cramped apartment, the walls thin with poverty but thick with love. "You're enough, Maya," her mother had said, her voice a lifeline in the shadows of Langford's skyscrapers. That love was her anchor now, steadying her as the courtroom transformed around her. The gallery, once a chorus of judgment, stirred with something new, respect, maybe, or shame. Victor's attorney sat frozen, his slick confidence undone, his pen still. But it was Victor himself who drew every eye, his tailored suit no longer a shield, his blue eyes raw with something Maya hadn't seen before, vulnerability. He rose, slow, unsteady, and stepped toward her, the space between them a chasm of years and lies. The gallery held its breath, the air crackling with the weight of what came next. Victor stopped, his hands twitching, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know," he said, his words breaking, a confession torn from a heart that had never known want. Maya met his gaze, her tears glistening but her spine unbowed. She saw him, not the billionaire's son, not the smirking heir, but a man grappling with a truth that unraveled his world. The room seemed to shrink, the oak panels and fluorescent lights fading, leaving just the two of them, bound by blood and broken promises. Victor extended a hand, trembling, his eyes searching hers for something, forgiveness, maybe, or absolution. "Forgive me for the blindness wealth breeds," he said, his voice cracking, each word a step toward redemption. Maya's breath caught, her heart a tangle of pain and possibility. She thought of her mother's letters, Edward Langford's remorse scrawled in ink, his love for them drowned by fear. She thought of the years she'd spent invisible, her name a whisper the world refused to hear. And yet, here was Victor, seeing her, truly seeing her for the first time. "It's not about forgiveness," Maya said, her voice soft but firm, profound in its simplicity. "It's about seeing each other as human." The words landed like a vow, rippling through the courtroom, touching every heart. Victor's hand dropped, but his eyes held hers, a silent promise taking root. The gallery stirred, some wiping tears, others nodding, their applause starting slow, then swelling, a wave of recognition for the girl who'd turned pain into power. Maya's presence was a beacon, her dignity a light that exposed the prejudice woven into the room's very walls. Judge Harlan bowed his head, his regret a shadow that lingered. The court wasn't just a place of law anymore, it was a mirror, reflecting truths too long ignored. Victor stepped back, his face a map of resolve and ruin. He turned to the gallery, his voice stronger now, though still raw. "I'll make this right," he said, not to Maya but to the world, for her, for all of us. He spoke of change, of donating to underprivileged causes, of honoring the heritage of his half-sister, a black woman whose blood was his own. The words were a pledge, a crack in the Langford legacy that let light through. Maya watched, her heart swelling, not with pride, but with hope. She'd come for truth, not to destroy, and in that truth, something new was born. Her mind drifted to Edward's ghost, to the letters that spoke of love he couldn't claim. Through her, he was redeemed, his cowardice undone by her courage. The courtroom felt it, a shift profound and eternal, as if the walls themselves exhaled. The applause faded, but the energy lingered, a current that pulsed through every soul. Maya's lawyer, his rumpled tie a badge of their fight, gripped her shoulder, his eyes wet with pride. She smiled, small but real, her tears drying on her cheeks. The weight of generations lifted, just a little, their strength flowing through her veins. She'd been the underdog, the girl from the projects, the voice they tried to silence. Now she was Maya Thompson, daughter of Clara, daughter of Edward, daughter of truth. The gallery watched her, not with pity or scorn, but with awe, their clapping hands a rhythm that echoed her heartbeat. Judge Harlan raised his gavel, but his eyes met hers first, a nod of respect that said more than words. The ruling was done, the estate shared, but the real victory was hers, her name, her place, her humanity, claimed at last. As Maya walked toward the courtroom doors, her steps steady, her head high, the world felt different. The oak panels, the polished floors, the whispers, they couldn't hold her anymore. She was free not just from the fight, but from the shadows that had tried to define her. Victor followed her with his eyes, his vow a weight he'd carry now. The gallery stood, some reaching out, their hands brushing the air as if to touch her light. Outside, the city waited, its skyscrapers gleaming, no longer a taunt but a promise. Maya paused at the threshold, her breath catching, the future a canvas she'd paint herself. What truths did the world still hide? What divides could empathy bridge? She didn't know, but she was ready to find out. In that moment, one lesson burned brighter than any verdict. Truth and resilience can silence injustice, no matter how deep its roots. Blood binds beyond color or class, and no one is above redemption. Maya's fight wasn't just for her, it was for every soul told they didn't belong, every heart dismissed by power's cold hand. Her victory was a call, a reminder that empathy turns silence into solidarity, that seeing each other as human is the first step toward change. As she stepped into the light, the world shifted just a little, and that shift was enough. Because dignity isn't given, it's claimed. Respect isn't offered, it's demanded. And Maya Thompson, with her tears, her truth, and her unyielding heart, had demanded it all, leaving echoes of redemption that would linger long after the courtroom doors closed.